I'm going to go with my great great grandmother, Virginia.
Wow.
Uh, she was the matriarch of our family. She buried all of her children before dying herself. And with the loss of my oldest son last year, and it's coming up on a year of when we first received the diagnosis, being in the hospital, his transition, and then celebrating his first heavenly birthday, I felt like there was something missing, and I never understood because she was 100% Native American, and being in the South, that was something that wasn't allowed. Like you hid that, so I knew nothing of the culture. I knew don't know what tribe we are from. I don't know any of that ancestry, but I remember her English was very broken. She never could call me Danielle, so she would call me Daniel. And the things that she would say, someone can hurt you without touching you. Um, Once a man, twice a child. I just remember those things prophetically. Um, and you never know who you are entertaining. So always she was a very strong Catholic woman. You always treat people as if you're entertaining Jesus. You don't turn anyone around who comes to your doorstep asking for water or food. If they're needing clothing, then you go naked until you get home because you know that there's something that you can wear there, and you give your neighbor who is your brother or your sister. And I have, since being a grieving mother, I only find peace when I stay at her home. So our family home is still standing. It was built by her sons. Um, it was um, it was on property um, that was purchased by Grandpa Pete, who could have passed for a white man. Her youngest son, which is my grandmother's dad, was a taxi cab driver. Um, and it's just so profound that the stories and just sitting at her feet. I just recently told my mom this week, I never understood the sadness in her eyes. Every Sunday we had family dinners at her home, and she would sit in her rocker, and she always had a footstool at the rocker, and it was the younger kids, her great grandkids, her great great grandkids, and that would sit on that footstool. They would just put us on that footstool to calm her. And that is the person who impacted my life at a very, very young age. And I carry her every day with me.
So Danielle told us about her great great, is it three greats? No,
Two,
two great grandmother, Virginia, who was 100% Native American and outlived all her children. And and Danielle still goes down to her house and finds peace there in that home. And Danielle used to sit at the feet of Virginia, her great great grandmother, on a footstool to, and it helped her. It helped the grandmother that Danielle was there and asking her questions and talking with her, and because she saw the sadness in her eyes. And she was an incredible lady, giving clothes off her back and water and food, and incredibly generous woman, would never turn anyone away from the door. And her youngest son was your dad's dad. No,
no, my maternal grandmother's father.
Okay.
So he was my
Grandma.
great grandfather. Her youngest son
Yeah.
was my great grandfather.
Okay. Okay.
I went to a very well known nursery school um, when I was younger. And it was where most of the doctors and attorneys and nurses' kids went to nursery school. It was called Nana's Nursery in New Iberia. And it took about 6 or 7 incomes from my mother, my father, their parents, my mother's sisters to make sure that they could pay for my nursery school every month. It was a collaborative because education was the most important. And my family always sacrificed so I could have a good education and advantages. And there was 3 little people because I didn't take naps. Um, and they would just pinch my legs and bite my legs during nap time. And fast forward, when I was just speaking about people asking me if I was adopted, it happened for the first time when I became a Girl Scout in elementary school. And my mother was one of the troop leaders, along with, I call Miss Lynn and Mr. William my white mama and white daddy, because they were with me most of the time. My mom always worked 2 or 3 jobs. And so she would like get things together and be there when she could. She always worked nights so she could be there doing day activities. But if there was something in the evening or at night, Miss Lynn would pick me up. And that's where I guess I first started understanding the differences of classes. I grew up in the projects. I grew up in HUD housing, but for me, it was a brick home. I didn't understand that it was the bricks. And I didn't understand if I needed a ride to get to an event or to a meeting. And being I was the only African American little girl in that troop. Also, I didn't understand why some of my friends' fathers didn't want their wives to come in my neighborhood and pick me up. And then as the troop grew, we lost girls, we gained girls. At one point in time, there was two young ladies that was going to join. And I spoke to one of them since we've talked about this, and she asked me not to use her full name, so I'll say it was 2 girls, A and D. And it was just a different type of vibe. Dee's dad had an issue because I was the only African American in the troop, and therefore did not want his daughter in the troop with a black girl. He didn't understand why I wasn't in the was in the more diverse Girl Scout group, which there was one that was predominantly black, but it was across town. And my mother and her mother, my grandmother and her sisters shared one vehicle. So my grandmother was a maid. My mom worked nights. Uh, and my mother's third sister worked at Kmart. So they had to share one vehicle to make sure everyone was where they were supposed to be. And so carpooling and car rides was something that I had to lean on. And with my mother and my father being so protective, they had to make sure that they trusted that person. And I just remember like some of the harsh things that I would hear A and D talk about. And it hurt. And we went on to middle school, we went on to high school. And in high school, I started dating um, my high school sweetheart, uh, Marcus. And I remember going to his house to tutor. He needed me to tutor one of his friends' girlfriends and help him with the project. And when I walked in the door, there was D. And I just stopped. And my best friend lived next door. And I felt I was gonna smother. I just wanted to be out of that home. And he was like, what is wrong with you? You love everybody. What's going on? And I was like, I went back into that fight. I was like, where's her father? Her father doesn't like black people. Why is she here? I don't think she like black people. Like, what, how am I going to tutor this person? I can't tutor this person. And he was like, calm down. Do you need to call your mother? Like, what is going on? And I was like, oh no, like her dad is going to come here and like, what is he going to do to us? And I was still that 9-year-old little girl. And Fred, and he was like, she lives here. She dates my brother. And I was like, she dates your brown brother? Like, wait, what has happened? And he was like, yeah, that's why she lives here. And so I called myself. I went back in the house and I remember just like sitting on his dad's sofa and looking at the dining room table and going, I felt sorry for her, but I envied her a little bit because she had taken a stand against racism. And however her exit was out of her father's home, she had somewhere else to go. But I was also confused because I didn't know how to build up that relationship or that bond. And I still felt like that scared little Girl Scout. Well, we graduated and Dee ended up getting pregnant. And I was going to trade school for accounting where I was in class with her auntie. And I remember her auntie asking me how she was doing. And I didn't know if it was like, are you trying to see where we be? Are you guys going to do harm to her? Have you heard through the grapevine she's pregnant? What are you going to do with my niece or nephew that's coming? And I was very skittish. So I kept it to myself for a few days. I went and I spoke to Dee and I told her that a family member had asked about her. And just to see the twinkle in her eye as she was going through this pregnancy and she was about to bring us this wonderful bundle of joy that was going to be spoiled by 18 and 19-year olds because you know what we was doing. Um, and I decided I needed to do something. And of course, she had the baby, and I guess I've always been the rebel. So her auntie and I became very close, and Dee's grandmother was asking to see her and the baby. I never forget, I had a 80 something two-tone brown escort. Dee and I talked about it, and we decided on a Saturday I was going to bring her to see her grandmother and her family that was going to be there, possibly her mother and her sisters. And they were going to see this bundle of joy and embrace what was my godchild. And we made sure that I pulled my car all the way up grandma's driveway, that there were other cars behind me. Um, and we're all just to see that family hug her and take the blanket off of the carrier and just love this little bundle of joy without casting down their generational discrimination and prejudice and unknown. This baby was going to break so many generational barriers of racism. And I was part of that. I seen it. I witnessed it. I celebrated it. And then her dad pulled up. I remember them hiding her and her baby. I remember standing in the grandfather clock because I went back to being not that 18-year-old, but that 9-year-old little girl. Who had a conversation with her dad while fishing. Stating that he wasn't sure if he felt comfortable of my safety of being a Girl Scout because of one individual that I still feared at 18. He ended up leaving, and it bothered me. It bothered me. I spoke to my dad about it. My father's a realist. And he said, "You're not 9 anymore. You've grown. What are you going to do?" At the time, I was working a part-time job at a photo studio. And of course, I would bring my godchild there to take pictures, and she would come to work with me every Saturday. So the photographer would sneak her in, and we would get pictures of her, even if it was one or two. And I started to send pictures to her grandfather. And I didn't know what that reaction was going to be from him. I didn't know if he was going to turn and be upset. I didn't know if he was going to try to find Dee and bring harm. But I knew if this baby brought so much joy to us, I didn't want him excluded from that. I didn't know if he was just going to keep the pictures, if he wanted them. But eventually he reached out. Eventually we were able to bring her mother, her father, and her sisters together and break those bonds of unforeseen hate, of unknown hate. When I confessed what I had done, it brought she and I closer together than any other time we had in our life. It meant more than us being at the hospital when she delivered, because now her daughter was going to be able to be part of her whole family. I remember her dad asking if I would take a walk with him outside. I wasn't scared anymore. And we walked in a park. He apologized.
Wow. Yeah.
He was so open. And it came from the heart. He accepted his responsibilities of discrimination and racism. And in the early 90s, that wasn't a favorable word. And I don't think I did anything special. I just wanted that grandfather to be part of his granddaughter's life. And her grandfather has been there every step of the way. because I just wanted him to see. Because I took the time to put a picture in an envelope and address it to him. And I took that risk because of one love. I took that risk being a daddy's girl. I knew D was one also. That's it.
Here was this white male who originally presented himself to you in a hateful way. And then you got to know his daughter intimately, and you included him because you felt like it was sorry. Yeah, that's what's so amazing is you knew that the joy and love that he was going to get out of it. And you also must have been thinking about this little baby, and you're wanting this little baby to be included, and your friend, of course. And it was risky to do that, but you did it. And it's made a tremendous difference in him, in his family, and her family, and you and your family. One small act to have all this ramifications is huge.